Ring the bells that still will ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I've been thinking a lot this year about empathy, and particularly what differentiates authentic empathy from a more superficial show. Perhaps more than any other text, it is these lyrics from Leonard Cohen's song Anthem that have helped me to find my way, or at least have set me on a path. I believe that true empathy only comes when we first make ourselves vulnerable, when we acknowledge the breaks in us. Only then can we understand and share the experiences, emotions, and yes, breaks in others. True empathy takes courage, and true empathy thrives when it is challenged. The power lies in the spaces, the cracks, and the breaks that we encounter every day of our lives. When we take the time to recognize and celebrate these small fissures, we find ourselves and forge our most resonant connections to those around us. When I was a child, the common rhyme, "Step on a crack, break your mother's back," caused me no end of anguish. For one thing, that was a lot of power and responsibility to hold in my gait. For another, once I began to look, it was overwhelming how many cracks existed in the world, in the sidewalk, in the concrete, in the bricks that lined our driveway. Before I could take a step, I had to look down and carefully choreograph my way across a crack-strewn landscape, determined not to be the one who caused irreparable harm. I literally had to look before I did any leaping. Thankfully, it didn't take too long for me to realize that that particular prophecy is somewhat oversold. However, this did lead me to notice the breaks in things, the spaces in between things, and the power of the pause. Take a moment, settle into your seats. Become aware of the ground beneath your feet. Allow your hands to rest in your lap or on your knees. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, go ahead. Mine will remain open, or you can take a soft gaze. Begin to take your awareness inward. Notice the way the lungs expand as you inhale, and the way that they deflate as you exhale. Feel the breath as it moves down the throat, as it fills the lungs and ribs, as it moves into the belly. Notice the natural rhythm and flow of your breath. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Pause. I like to think about that pause. By taking time to slow down and breathe, we're already giving ourselves the gift of stillness. But in that pause lies a moment of true stillness before we flow into the next part of our breath. Imagine the multitude of possibilities contained in that single pause. Tiny, inevitable, barely recognized. A moment that occurs 1,000,000 times a day. A space between what is past and what is yet to come. You're welcome to open your eyes if they're still closed. As I grew up, I thankfully grew out of the need to avoid stepping on sidewalk cracks, but that didn't end my awareness of the in-between. When I was in college, I fell in love with poetry. I attended workshops, attended readings. I read poetry out loud, seated under various beautiful trees around the grounds. I was in love with the way that poets could string their words together like delicate beads. or hurl them like lightning bolts. But most of all, I was fascinated by line breaks. A tiny, infinitesimal pause in which the eye moves from the end of one line of poetry to the beginning of the next. A slice of white space around the words. A brief suspension of language into stillness. Here, too, is a pause for breath, and also a pause that allows one to reflect on what has just happened and on what is about to happen. Here's an example from William Carlos Williams. To a poor old woman, munching a plum on the street, a paper bag of them in her hand. They taste good to her. They taste good. To her, they taste good to her. Or from poet Richard Sykin, what a sweet lady. Sing, lady, sing. Of course, she wakes the dragon. Love always wakes the dragon. And suddenly, that requires you to be absolutely silent and absolutely present. To listen and recognize what is happening between the lines. To let their stories and emotions sit without judgment. And is this not, in the end, the most significant gift we can give to anyone? To allow them a space where they can let their cracks show. To give them room to breathe. And then to celebrate the light that comes through those cracks and the courage that it takes to let that light shine. We spend so much time concealing the parts of us that we see as broken. We spend so much time putting on a facade of perfection. We fear to be vulnerable, for what is more frightening than to show someone your true face, warts and all? But it is these breaks that make us human. It is these flaws that in turn allow us to hold space, acceptance, and understanding for those around us. True empathy, then, authentic empathy, comes from this path to active connection. If we have never fallen down and had to pull ourselves up, how can we ever understand someone else's struggle to rise? And if we never allow ourselves to show the parts of us that we think are broken, how can we ever find someone who will love us for who we are? Or indeed, how can we love ourselves? In the cracks, then, there is light. In the brokenness, there is promise. In the pause, there is infinite possibility. Thank you.